What's going on, everyone? My name is Josh19 and today I wanted to make a video on how to record games with Dxtory. Basically, I just wanted to go over the settings that I use and help familiarize you guys with the program itself. So the first tab here is called Target. It's kind of irrelevant. We don't really need to use it, so we're going to go ahead and skip that. The next tab here is called Overlay. This is your basic FPS display settings. So your video FPS, this just displays the actual FPS that your computer is running the game at, and your write file FPS is the FPS that you're actually recording the game at. You can choose if you want to display these or not. You can also select the colors that you want to be displayed when you're recording and not recording. You can just click on the little color here and change it to whatever you want. When you are recording, it actually does display both the video and the write file FPS at the same time, so you'll be able to see what you're actually running the game at and recording the game at the same time. So that's kind of nice. So let's go ahead and go over the next tab here called Folder. This is basically where you're going to designate the folder path that you're going to actually record your games to. So you can actually change your path by clicking on the current path here and then clicking the little folder icon here. And this will bring up a browse for folder menu that you can go ahead and find a folder. If you don't have a folder already created, you can go ahead and hit make new folder and then you can name it whatever you want. Mine's on DayZ, I'll hit OK, and so that's my current folder path. The actual folder with a magnifying glass icon is browse for folder. This will just take you right into that folder that you currently have it set to, so you can see any of the previous recordings that you've had or anything like that. As you can see, I don't have any in this folder currently, so my folder is empty. The write speed, this is not super important. This is only really important if if you have a really low write speed, then you may have some issues recording HD and things like that. But you can always do a benchmark here to check what your current write speed is. This will go ahead and set the path to the folder path that you have up here, and if you hit run, it'll go ahead and run this benchmark and tell you how fast you're actually writing. I don't know the specific numbers on what's required to record HD and things like that. I have 107 and I'm recording to a secondary hard drive. I'm not even recording to my main hard drive. And I have no issue at all recording full HD 60 frames per second or anything like that if I wanted to. So again, I'm not sure the actual settings. You might be able to look those up to find like the minimum, but I think even with like 50 or 60 megabytes per second, you'd still be able to record full HD without a problem. Okay, so down here at the bottom is your folder to save screenshots. So again, this is if you want to use a program to take screenshots. Sometimes this helps because if you try to print screen or something like that while you're in a game, sometimes you'll just get a black screen, or you'll actually print screen, it'll just be your desktop. So being able to actually save screenshots with this program can certainly help in certain situations. So again, this is just if you click the folder icon here, it'll actually allow you to select the folder to save your screenshots, and then again, the little folder with the magnifying glass takes you into that folder. So we'll go ahead and go over the next tab here, which is your hotkeys. These you can go ahead and set to whatever you want. I don't think mine are set to the default. I think I changed them. I used to use fraps a lot way back in the day, so I have my start, stop, movie capture to F9 because that's what fraps was, and I like that. By default, I don't even remember what Dxtory was, so I can't even tell you. But you can set it to whatever you want. It's not really that important to have a specific key. You know, you can just have whatever you want to use. Again, for your screenshots, you can set whatever you want as well. Push to talk, I don't ever use this. This may be useful if you're maybe recording and streaming at the same time and you wanted to let's say talk to your stream, but you didn't want that to be recorded. So you could have a push to talk where you can actually push the button to record your voice and things like that in your actual video. Again, a lot of these settings in here I don't think are that important, so the most important ones are your just start and stop and your screenshot buttons. So the next tab here is your movie tab. This is your most important tab here. This is where we go over all of the video codecs and different things like that on how to make your video good quality as well as keep it lower file size. So by default, Dxtory uses the Dxtory video codec. This is an alright codec. The quality's not bad, but the file size is pretty large with it. So I wouldn't recommend using it. What I use is what's called the Lagarith Lossless codec. This is actually a third-party codec that you have to download. I'll go ahead and include that download link, or the link to that website, down below in the description, so you guys can download that. It's actually a really good codec. It's great quality, and it keeps your file size a lot smaller compared to the Dxtory video codec, at least. So I like using that. For my settings for the Lagarith lossless codec, I'll bring that up for you guys. I do use the enable null frames. You don't have to use this. Basically what that does is if I'm ever in a spot where I'm standing still or the frame is actually not changing, it actually just uses the previous frame, and so it doesn't have to write a brand new frame each time if I'm not doing anything. So it actually saves a little bit of write time and file size and things like that. Again, if you hover over it here, it will actually display a full tooltip that will give you more information about it. I also use multi-threading because I have a multi-core processor. So this actually just uses all your processors to help make things write faster and things like that. If you only have a single core processor, then you may just want to go ahead and keep that unchecked, because that's probably going to cause you some problems if you do have it checked. But if you do have multiple processors, like a dual core, quad core, or whatever, however many cores you have, it may be useful to actually have it. Prevent unsampling, I'm not really sure exactly what this does. I think it has something to do with colors, but I just leave it checked. I think it was checked by default, so I didn't mess with it. The mode here, I use just RGB defaults. I think by default it actually isn't this for some reason, even though it says default. I think when I first got the codec, it was like Y, one of these Y ones, I think. I just set it to RGB. It works fine. Everything looks great. So those are the settings that I use for the actual codec itself. Down here, all these settings, I just leave them at default. You don't need to mess with, I don't even think you can mess with anything of these, but you don't need to worry about that. Your frame rate, this is what you're actually recording your game at. I recommend always using 30 frames per second. There's no reason to really ever record at 60, because if you are even uploading to YouTube, YouTube can only play back 30 frames per second anyways, so you're just kind of wasting file space on your computer by recording at 60 frames per second. It's really not necessary, so I would always record at 30 frames. Your output, so this is just your regular file output, and I recommend always using AVI. You can use raw cap. The file sizes are much larger because it is raw data, and you have to use this thing down here, which is called the raw cap converter. I'm not very familiar with this, so I won't go into depth about this, but basically you take that raw data and you put it in here, it converts it to like then a video file or something like that. I think I tried it once, like really long time ago, but again, I would recommend just using AVI. It works perfectly fine. For options, I would always include your mouse cursor if you're playing any sort of game where you're actually using your keyboard and mouse. If you're using a controller, like playing a Steam game using a controller, you may not have to check that, but I definitely would always include mouse cursor because it's important to have that in there when you're playing a game. Otherwise, people may not know what you're actually doing at certain times because you have no cursor there. So by default, it may be unchecked, so make sure you guys do check that. So down here in the scaling, this is kind of important as well. I always leave the percent at 100. I never change the percent. What I change is the size. So if I want to record in 1080p, I would change my width to 1920 and my height to 1080. So 1920 by 1080 is full HD. Right now I'm recording in 720p, which is what I like to record a lot of my videos at anyways. So if you are having issues where you're playing a game and you're getting some FPS drops and things like that when you're actually recording, and you are actually recording at 1080p, I would recommend recording at 720p instead. It actually will bring up your frame rate a lot, and because it's actually less data that's having to be recorded. So that's something to keep in mind. And again, 720p is still great quality, and yeah, there's not really all that. It's not really all that important to record at 1080p unless you're doing like a tutorial or you need to show people menus. Maybe you're talking about in-game menus or things like that. Then it may be important to use 1080p. But if you're just for regular gameplay and things like that, 720p works just great. Okay, so the next tab here we're going to go over is audio. This is actually something that's really cool about Dxtory, which other programs like Fraps and things don't have. So basically, for your audio settings, what you can do is you can actually set these audio stream numbers, which are basically different devices that you can use to record audio. And you can have, I think, like, oh, here we go, maximum of 8. I was going to say 10, but there's actually a maximum of 8. So you can keep adding them if you want to whatever you want and select the device that you want to use. In this case, I only have 2. I use my speakers, which is basically going to be the in-game audio sound, and I use my microphone, which is going to allow it to just record my the sound from my microphone. So this is great because you can actually, it helps in the editing process because you can actually adjust the microphone volume separately from the actual in-game volume and things like that. And for the actual volume of my microphone, I only use about, it looks like 19. If you want, you can adjust this or, you know, find whatever works for you. Again, I would recommend you guys do some test videos before you actually record a full Let's Play or something like that. I would always record some test footage to make sure that, you know, all your sound works and everything like that. Your video looks good, everything. Your file size isn't crazy, things like that. So that's always good. Again, you can use the push to talk hotkey. This would be based off of the hotkey that you would set, which I don't have any set right now. So I will show you guys how to extract the audio and everything before we end this video. So because I know the dual channel audio is a little confusing to some people, so I'll definitely go over that as well. For the audio codecs, I always just use PCM. I think that's default, and I use just the 48,000 hertz, and I just use 16-bit stereo. You can change this if you want to higher quality, like 24 or 32-bit, or even higher. It will increase your file size, and you're probably not going to even notice that much of a difference. So I just kind of leave it at the default. I think it works fine. Your next tab here is your screenshots. Again, this is fairly similar to how it was in the video. I just leave everything at default. For the file format, I like to use PNGs. I think they're better quality than JPEGs. But if you want to use JPEGs, you can you know, select JPEG and then you have your JPEG quality here. But I think PNGs are much better. They may be a little bit higher file size, but it's an image. It's still not going to be very high file size, and they are better quality. You do have the option again here to use your mouse cursor. If in screenshots, I don't think it's really necessary to have mouse cursors, but if there was ever an instance where you needed it, it does have the option there. Same thing in here, you have your percent scale if you want to scale by percentage, or your actual size. So if you want to take your full 1080p screenshot or just, you know, a 720p screenshot or whatever, you can set your sizes here manually if you want. The next tab here is your advanced settings. These I really don't mess with at all. I think by default most of all these are off, and mine are all off. The things that couple things that I do change occasionally, of course, the processing threads. This is how many threads your computer has. I always set it to the maximum. That way I can use the maximum amount, so things record faster and things like that. Certain games may require you to limit video FPS. I know I've had some issues back in the past with certain games. Some weird things were happening while recording games. And then if I limited the video FPS, it actually fixed up those problems. Because those games needed to always run at like 60 frames per second or something like that. Otherwise, they unsynced and things went crazy. So occasionally you may have to check this box limit video FPS. Basically what that's going to do is it's going to just cap out your computer to say, hey, I cannot run this game at more than 60 frames per second while Dxtory is open. You can set it lower if you want. I wouldn't recommend really going lower than 60 because you definitely want to try to run your games at 60 when you're playing, because it's quite important to have that smooth gameplay. So yeah, that's about it for this. Again, if you hover over them, it'll give you more information about the things if you want to read about them. I'm not going to go over all these different things because I don't really use them. And then the last tab here is your global. Again, I think these are all the default settings. Check for updates, things like that are all in here. So that's about it for the actual program itself of Dxtory. Up here is your actual profile. This is basically selecting the game that you're going to currently be recording. When you open the game, or when you open a game, it will usually set the profile to the game, whatever game you just opened up. So if you ever have a case where you open up a game and you don't see the Dxtory little FPS thing in the top left, and it doesn't show it on the profile here, you may want to close Dxtory and reopen it after you've already opened the game, and then it should read the game. You also have your edit profile settings here, where you can select like a certain game, like Guild Wars 2. I can delete it from a profile. I can edit the name, edit the icon, add it to the ignore list. Basically, adding it to the ignore list will mean when you open up that program, it actually will not read it at all as a game. So you won't have the little FPS icon up there at the top left, and it won't try to record it if you ever hit, whatever your hotkey is for recording while you're in that program. I know commonly if you open up Skype and things like that, I don't know if it's on here, doesn't look like it. But if you open up Skype and things like that, you'll see the little FPS thing if you have Dxtory open. So what you could do is you could find Skype in this list, and you could go ahead and click the add to ignore list, and then it won't have that anymore in there. So lastly, I wanted to go over, let me go ahead and open up the folder here. So this is the actual this is an actual video that I did record with Dxtory. You can see down here the length is about 10 minutes, and the size is about 20 gigs, which actually is not bad at all. This is using that Lagarith lossless codec. I'm sure if you guys have used Fraps in the past, you'll notice that you'll get at 20 gigabytes in the first like 1 to 2 minutes. It's fairly large, and if you use the Dxtory regular codec, you'll definitely hit 20 gigs a lot faster than in 10 minutes. So this actually is not too bad. This again will tell you the frame width, frame height, and of course your frame rate that it was recorded at. So in order to extract the audio from this, what you want to do is you want to right click on it, and you want to go ahead and click on extract audio stream. What this will do is it'll go ahead and break in those two channels that we had, which I'll go ahead and show you guys one more time here. Once that finishes up, or I'll do it while that's finishing up. So let's go back to the audio tab. So what it will do is your ST0 is going to be this first audio stream number, and the ST1 is going to be the second. And if you have 3 or 4 or however many you have, it'll arrange them all by ST0, ST1, ST2, and so on. So we can see here that for the first one I have my speakers, and the second one I have my microphone. So if we go ahead and preview these, so that's obviously the in-game sound.
What's going on, everyone? This is Josh19 here.
And then that is the actual microphone. Again, this is important to do because when I'm editing this, I can set the volume of my mic higher or lower depending on if it needs to be louder or less depending on the actual volume of the game, or I can set the game volume lower and things like that so they don't conflict with each other. When you record all that together, then you kind of just hope that all the volume levels are good, and there's never an instance where the game audio gets too loud and it goes over your voice. So this is a great way to actually record. I don't believe you have to do this. The dual channels, I don't know. I've always done the dual channel audio on here, so I've never really tried it without it, but I would definitely recommend doing it this way, just for editing purposes. Alrighty guys, well thanks everybody for watching. If you liked the video, please hit the like button, and if you'd like to see more videos in the future, then please subscribe, and don't forget to keep on owning.